Outbound, it's 24 minutes downtown to the airport. Inbound Eisenhower delays kick in at Mannheim, 34 minutes, 390 to downtown. Outbound 29. Stevenson, now 36 minutes, 355 to drive. Ryan, 19 minutes, 95 to downtown. I-57, 16 minutes, I-80 to the merge. Mission Ford back down to 13 minutes. Northbound Tri-State tight at the Eisenhower. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our AM 560 Weather Center. Clouds, breezy, and chilly in your forecast, high 48. Currently 44. Next news at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. Let freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. You remember that debate, final debate, low 1 week ago? Seems like a lifetime, doesn't it? Here's what Joe Biden had to say about health care and how Obamacare would turn into Bidencare.
If you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies.
He sure has a funny way of defining competition. Most people don't define it as government-imposed price controls and rationing. But I guess that's where I differ with the Democrat Socialists. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by our friend C.Steven Tucker, founder and principal broker for HealthInsuranceMentor's.com. There's nobody who knows more about health insurance than Mr. Tucker, who joins us now. Thanks, CS. Good to have you.
Good morning, Dan and Amy.
So the Obamacare open enrollment period, November 1 to December 15, if I have that right.
Right.
What should people know as they look to access the exchanges November 1 as needed?
Well, a lot of good news. As you and I have spoken many times over the last few years, you could not buy an individual policy in the state of Illinois for nearly 5 years that would grant you access to any of our teaching hospitals, not Northwestern, not the University of Chicago Hospital, not Rush University Medical Center, and not Lurie Children's Hospital. And that went on for a very long time. We had to redesign company structures for mom-and-pop businesses from just being simply self-employed to LLC or LLP partnerships so they could obtain group health insurance, which would grant them access to these hospitals. Those days are finally over. You can now buy the PPO policy available from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois called the Blue Choice Preferred PPO, and it will grant you access to the entire Northwestern Medical Group, which is now 10 hospitals, more than 4,000 doctors, more than 200 answering facilities, all included in the Blue Choice Preferred PPO individual policies, and Rush University Medical Center is now also in the individual Blue Choice Preferred PPO plans. So that is a huge, huge development that I could not be happier to share with everyone.
Yeah, that is big news because I remember when Obamacare went through and people who had been seeing their oncologists for years were in tears at University of Chicago, and the nurses like, he lied to us. Yeah. And these were liberals that were saying this, that were just flabbergasted by it.
Oh, yes. I used to engage in pretty fervent debates with our friends on the left who would call. There are no longer any debates because they, too, cannot take their children to the University of Chicago Hospital or themselves, for that matter. And that is still the case today, by the way. That hospital is still out of network with all individual plans. So anybody over at UFC, if you're within my voice, let's step up and join the PPO at the bare minimum.
Well, the good news is that they're not trying to get to those hospitals anyway because they're afraid of COVID. So you don't have to worry about them. It's all hands on deck for COVID to the exclusion of any other malady.
Even when hospitalizations are down in Chicago.
Wanted to get your take from a policy perspective on what you've heard from both Trump and Biden down the stretch as Biden continues to try to advance the flag of Bidencare. And he makes the assertion, of course, that what President Trump is proposing, and with the Supreme Court case that's pending this coming term, is that overturning Obamacare in toto, if that were to come to pass, would mean that people with pre-existing conditions would not get health insurance coverage, and President Trump then, by extension, is proposing that people with pre-existing conditions be thrown off of their health insurance plans and unable to get coverage.
All a bunch of poppycock. First of all,
common spelling. Yes.
Yes. The crux of the Texas v. Azar case is predicated on one major issue, that the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, cannot survive without the existence of the individual mandate. By the time that case gets to the U.S. Supreme Court, earliest would be June or July of 2021, at the very earliest. And when that gets there, you will have almost 3 years of solid evidence that the law can survive without the existence of the individual mandate, because the president zeroed out the individual mandate in the 2017 Jobs and Tax Cut Act. So the law has been surviving perfectly well without the existence of the individual mandate. So if they do anything at all, they will sever the individual mandate from the rest of the law. Yeah, they did twice in the last Supreme Court session, and they've done many other times when large pieces of legislation, there are sections that are contested. So the ACA is not going anywhere anytime in the near future. That said, even if it were repealed by that case, which I highly doubt it will happen, we still have in our state a functioning high-risk health insurance pool. Anyone can Google it. It's called the Illinois Comprehensive Health Insurance Plan. Most states dissolved their high-risk health insurance pools. Our state did not. So it still exists. So anybody in the state of Illinois, if the ACA was overturned, could go to the Illinois Comprehensive Health Insurance Plan and enroll. Currently, it only accepts Section 15 applicants, which are those who exhaust COBRA, but it could be easily adjusted to accept Section 7 applicants, which were people who were not HIPAA qualified prior to the ACA. As you know, in 25 years in this business, I have never been unable to offer anyone health insurance long before anyone ever heard of Barack Obama, because HIPAA law, Section 2741 and 2742 of Public Law 104-191, guaranteed those coverage for pre-existing conditions, even in the individual marketplace.
So the pre-existing conditions is an important point, so I'm glad you explained that. Additionally, what Trump has done to improve Obamacare over his first 4 years, particularly as it relates to families, small businesses, the expansion of association health plans for employers generally, speak to those modifications, arguably improvements over the last 4 years.
Well, you have to use DuckDuckGo to find the good things the president has done.
Yes.
You cannot use Google. But if you use DuckDuckGo, you can Google some recent articles by the New York Post, which is currently banned by the member of the Taliban, Jack. That's what he looked like the other day during testimony. It looked like a hostage video, did it not?
Yeah, it was bizarre.
It's very disturbing. But you could Google a recent article by the wonderful New York Post entitled 11 Things Trump Has Done to Fix Obamacare. Okay. And one of the remarkable things linked in that article is a wonderful report by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and Health and Human Services, which denotes that there have been 1,027 generic drugs approved in fiscal year 2017. More since then. These are historic numbers of generic drugs, reducing the cost of things like insulin. Insulin used to be a tier 3 or 4 drug if you're using Novolog or Humalog, for example. Humalog's still tier 4, but you can get it at GoodRx.com for about $68 at Walgreens if you use GoodRx.com, which is a large PBM, pharmacy benefit manager. You don't even need insurance. It's just a coupon. But the first one, Novolog, is now a tier 1 drug, which means it's not subject to deductible on most health plans. So that's just one example. There are 1,027 other examples of generic drugs that have been developed and have saving people thousands of dollars a year on prescription drugs.
Yeah,
that's just one example.
And just on that point too, the drug price inflation has been de minimis over the last 3 years too.
Yes.
And so against the backdrop of, I wish President Trump would have mentioned that in the debate, against the backdrop of Joe Biden suggesting that price controls is the way that we're going to control drug prices, which of course creates all sorts of externalities and does not ultimately reduce price inflation. It just creates shortages, which increase prices. That's how economics works. But this is an important point. So it's more competition in the system, more approval of generic drugs, legislation like right to try, and so 1.5% of price inflation over 3 years in drug prices.
That is remarkable. And by the way, this public option that Mr. Biden speaks about will very quickly be the only option. The private sector cannot compete with a public option because a public option will be able to tap into the U.S. Treasury at any time to solve the problem of deficits. We cannot do that in the private sector. So eventually, and I'm talking in probably less than a year, 18 months, if that happens, you're going to wipe out all private health insurance plans because they won't be able to compete. And then there's not going to be a public option. There's only going to be one option.
Well, this is what they've been doing ever since they needed to water down Obamacare to pass it, right? I mean, really, ever since Hillary Clinton introduced single payer, which is trying to get through the back door what they couldn't get through the front door. And this, public option and talking about using words like competition makes it sound so innocuous when, in point of fact, this is just the backdoor government takeover they've always wanted.
That's exactly right. And the evidence is how Medicare operates today. Medicare is able to outsource their billing and all these other functions that private health insurers have to use their resources to pay for. Medicare doesn't have to. So when you hear these erroneous statements like Medicare is more efficient than private health insurance, so we should just expand Medicare to people 60 years of age like Biden wants to do. Harvard did a study on the expansion of Medicaid to people 60 years of age. It'll cost almost $100 billion a year, right? These are not fiscally possible options. They're fantasy options, but they sound good to those who have no idea what they're talking about.
And so the connection here, because this is a point of contention over the last 6 months of the campaign too, is whether Joe Biden, ultimately, Bidencare would kick 175 million people off their private health insurance. The answer is, yeah, it would.
100%, and it's 185 million people that have private-sponsored, employer-sponsored coverage, and there are millions more who have individual health insurance plans. All of that would be eliminated very quickly under the Biden proposals.
Well, if Trump wins a second term, I'm nominating C.Steven Tucker for his health care policy point person, at least spokesperson.
Yes.
No question about it. C.S. Tucker, founder and principal broker for HealthInsuranceMentor's.com. C.S., thanks as always for enlightening us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. See you Saturday at Freedom Summit.
Yes, we sure will. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson